how to frame the sale in a way where this is going to sound really harsh. I'll just say it, where it's almost like the customer should feel dumb if they don't make the decision to buy because they've already told you all the reasons why they want it.
In the last years of being an entrepreneur, what was the lowest point of your life? What's the worst hire you ever made? What's the best piece of advice you've ever received? If you could go back 3 years ago and start your pay-per-lead company, what would you have done differently knowing what you know now? Welcome back to Make America Remote Again. I'm here with John Casto. We're in Medellín, Colombia. John, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, man.
Dude, so we got connected because we're both entrepreneurs here in Medellín, Colombia. And you've been telling me you've been here for the last year. And I'm always curious about, to start, what brought you to Medellín, Colombia?
I first came to Medellín in 2016 with a group of buddies when it was still kind of weird to go to Colombia.
Yeah.
We just went almost by accident. We just picked somewhere random to go. And I absolutely loved it. I remember coming specifically to Medellín. It was a completely different city then, right? And then I actually met, who's now my wife, I met 3 months after I came back from that trip.
Wow.
She's not from Medellín. She's from outside of Bogota in Boyacá, which was super campesino, 3-4 hours away from the major city.
Yeah.
So we've actually been spending a lot of time traveling back to visit her family, probably 2 to 3 months every single year. I'm fully virtual. We don't have kids yet. I had a brick and mortar business that I sold, and I had nothing to tie me down. I want something different. So I actually said, hey, let's move to Colombia. Let's do something different. So about 2 years ago, we started prepping. A year and a half, we actually made the move.
That's amazing, man. It's really cool because I think so many people have a misconception about Colombia until they come here for the first time. But it's because what we were sold as for years, narcos and all the bad things we hear about Colombia. So we think, I'm sure you have people in your life that are like, you're going to Colombia, you're moving. Where in the States you're from? You said Washington?
Virginia, Washington, area.
Okay, cool. Obviously very different than Colombia.
Different, yeah.
So when you first came here, how big was a culture shock for you back in 2016?
It was my second time in Latin America. So I'd gone to Peru in 2011, and that's very different than Colombia, right? Far less developed, very different culture too. And so it was still different for me for sure. Yeah. But I felt like this country was very easy to connect with culturally. You had the logistical differences, right, day to day. Things aren't quite as easy here, but they're also very simple at the same time.
For sure.
Especially 2025. It's not that different from living in the U.S. in the sense of ease,
correct,
of access to whatever you want. Right?
Yeah, I met someone yesterday actually through a friend, and I added him to the entrepreneurs group that I run. I used to run it, and I'm like, dude, when I came here, I knew no one. There's 2 people I knew, and now you come here, you literally would feel right at home because everybody's trying to escape something in the U.S. They want a better life. There's so many entrepreneurs here. And the group is called Entrepreneurs of Medellín. I added him today, and he was like, well, it's cool to be in the group, but I'm now need to be an entrepreneur. And I'm like, bro, so many people here are not entrepreneurs. They just work remote. If you live here, you're probably making money online. And I think once you start, that's the first, I always tell people before you go all in on the business, work remote, figure out how to make money, and then you can grow from there. So I'm interested, what is it that you do in terms of, I know you do a little bit of your bulletproof scaling. Talk a little bit about that. How did you start with this, and what exactly does it do today?
Yeah, so I owned a gym for 10 years. I learned from Hermosi. That's basically how I set it up to be a sellable asset. So I sold that a year before we moved. And then before we sold it though, I was kind of prepping for the next thing. So 2018, 2019, I started doing drop shipping with the same skill set I learned with Facebook ads, which is how we basically grew my gym with a high ticket offer. So I did e-com dropshipping through COVID until 2022. And all my friends were actually pivoting from dropshipping e-commerce to lead gen as an affiliate, right? So a direct publisher, whatever you want to call it. Basically a traffic generator. You get paid on a per lead basis, and then also pay per call too, where you get paid on a phone call basis. So I followed suit. It was the right, everything kind of lined up when it gives you preparation meets opportunity. So I landed because that's literally what it was like. I landed in lead gen and pay-per-call on the right offer with the skill set of Facebook ads and performance marketing I've been working on for years.
Yeah.
So, I remember we did our first almost $30,000 in a single day off 10K in ad spend. That's not every day. Don't want to paint a false picture.
Yeah. But that's possible.
When I saw that could happen, this is 3-4 months into doing lead gen and pay-per-call.
Wow.
I was like, I'm sold.
This
right?
is it.
Yeah.
And you work with lawyers now.
Mainly attorneys. We also do some other verticals like insurance, for example.
Sure. But totally different than gym owners.
Yeah, but same principles. Like we're thinking about it from what's the acquisition cost on the customer, not what's the cost per lead and the margin I make from it.
And also like the business itself is like, that doesn't matter as much.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You're more about like the literal lead generation. So before we dive into this, I'm actually curious because you were running a gym for 10 years. And did you ever think about like scaling that? Were you burning out? Like, why did you decide to?
I got lucky again because we were finalizing the lease on the second location in December 2019. You know what would have happened come March 2020? I would have been paying $6,000, $7,000 a month for that second location with zero revenue.
Correct.
And you know what the landlord would have done? He would have held me to every freaking thing.
100%. Yeah. Wow. That's talking about luck. Like some people are like, yeah, I got lucky. I met this person. Like you literally got lucky. Yeah. Like you had no idea December 2019 what was going to happen. Nobody knew, right? Because I was in Colombia in March 2020. Obviously, no one knew what was going to happen. So with Gym Launch, this could be off the record. Like, did they actually help you? Like, was there the value that you got? Because I never hear about people.
Best ROI I've ever had from a coaching program, hands down. I've done everything from personal development coaching with Tony Robbins and Landmark Forum. More specific on like the business side, I've done. I've been in the Russell Brunson, Dan Kennedy world since like 2011.
Right.
I've done almost every coaching program I could imagine.
Okay.
And there's never been something that was so practical, unemotional, and logical in how Hormozi taught us how to take a dollar in advertising and turn it into $4 up front. Like it was stupid.
The paid ads section was like the killer.
The sales process.
Because
I learned high ticket selling at a very like emotional, almost like manipulative level. And it worked for sure. Like don't get me wrong.
Especially with gyms, like you're
selling a dream.
Of course.
Right? You have to.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to just lose the weight the next day after paying.
There has to be a connection. Like it's like,
Exactly. You need emotional buy-in, so it's an emotional sale. Hormozi's process is amazing. It taught you the power of a really good offer, which is a free offer, which they actually ended up having to pay for.
And his book, where one of his books.
He explains it.
Yeah.
So you advertise it as a free 6-week challenge. They come in the door. You logically break down why they want the thing, the outcome of weight loss, whatever it is. And then you tell them they just need to pay a $700 deposit. And surprisingly or not, about half the people that will walk in would actually pay that $700, right?
Wow.
Half of them would then continue as a member for the next year. So the cost to get that customer initially was $150. It maybe was $400 to $500 by the time I sold, but the value of the customer on average was huge. $2,000 to $3,000,
which is huge.
Yeah.
What's interesting is that I briefly indirectly met Alex in Final Hacking Live 5 years ago in January when we got our 2 Comma Club, and I remember telling people, I was like, dude, I felt so special going to 2 Comma Club, and then you go to the room and it's like hundreds of people. I'm like, oh, we're not special. And he was one of the special people because he got in 2020 the 2 Comma Club X award, right? The 8-figure one. I was like, oh shit. And then they also got an award for donating $1 million or something like that. And I'm like, oh my God, this is incredible. I've never seen that to date. People always talk about like 5K, 10K, which is still amazing. But $1 million donations, you make a lot of money.
Badass.
Yeah, it was super badass. Then a couple months later, we were the first agency owners. And by we, I used to work for Atlas Digital as a marketing agency. And we were the first agency owners to use Allen. So we used Allen, and then we started selling it. And, Allen, it had its ups and downs. We got results from it. Unfortunately, not everybody did. I think... it
was super early, man.
It was super early, and it was not for everybody. And Alex knew that, and I think he just couldn't... I mean, dude, it was selling like crazy. We used it for our own agency. We went from like... It's a whole thing. I'll talk about it on our podcast. But it was insane. And the reason I'm telling you this is because his sales process... I learned about it then because I feel
it's all logic, man. There's no emotion, which is my favorite part about it.
Right. I do think because now I'm learning from Cole Gordon and Jeremy Miner. There does need to be some emotional connection because you're also talking to human beings. I think Alex is a little very robotic and he's very pop. But I think the best salespeople in the world are able to use logic and emotion and combine them because sales there needs to be a process, but every time it's different. So
humans, right?
Exactly. So 2019. Got lucky, exited, and then now you're running their agency, and you guys work majority with lawyers, and you've been doing this for what? About you said 2 years?
Almost 3 years.
Almost 3 years. Wow.
Yeah.
And is your goal to like scale and sell? Like where do you hope to go from here?
I'm still trying to figure that out. I'm going deeper right now. So typically like in the affiliate space, you're at least initially when you come in, it's hard to find actual direct lawyers with big budgets. So you could build more of like a traditional agency where you find 10 lawyers and you're selling them 10 leads a day each, right?
Sure,
That's more of like your SMMA.
You're right, right.
What we do is high volume, high scale. So a lot of times we go to networks, and affiliate networks will have 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 buyers with big budgets on the back, right? So your capacity of number of leads or phone calls you could sell per day to the network is massive.
Yeah.
So what I've been doing the last 2 months, like I've started going from just affiliate marketing conferences where you see like a lot of affiliates and just networks. Now I'm going to attorney conferences where I'm actually shaking hands with attorneys who maybe I don't do business today. I probably sell them traffic or leads or calls already through a network, but now I'm working to shake their hands directly and actually sell to them.
Really interesting. So it's a completely different ballgame.
It's a different game.
What other differences are you noticing between doing this and the PPL model versus like what you did when you were with your gyms and going to gym lunch? What are some of the, because it's completely two different.
It's interesting because the landscape of the legal, the vertical and like affiliate marketing in our space, when I first came in, we'd get paid on a per lead basis. So it didn't matter. I mean, it did matter if the lead converted, but this is why a lot of affiliates kind of get away with doing shady shit, right?
Sure.
Because it's just the initial front end math of what does it cost to produce a conversion against what you get paid. So a lot of guys will just run like super aggressive ads that make outrageous claims. They'll make their margin for the next like 4 to 6 weeks, and then they burn the client, right? Thankfully, legal, like attorneys as a vertical or offer or niche, it's driven based on contract or retainer base. So we actually only monetize based on a closed deal that's gone through quality assurance with the attorney's team that they can actually litigate for that client. So it's very aligned with the attorney and the client and the end consumer, which is super cool. So I say long answer to your question. This is exactly how I had to think about when I ran my gym, because it was great to get like cheap leads, but what was my cost per acquisition to get the customer against the lifetime value that they would typically produce? So having that training for a decade or more and working in the trenches of a gym has, I believe, helped set me up to be better at what I do now, because I'm not thinking short-sighted like a lot of affiliates or publishers do, where it's what do I make today on the lead? It's more how do I get the attorney to be profitable with me through this scale.
It's much more B2B. I mean, it was B2B as well with the gym launch, but I think gym owners operate on that type of model. But I think lawyers are just like, their margins are also like pretty crazy compared to
their margins are insane.
Yeah, insane.
But their target cost per acquisition is like
crazy high too, of course.
Relatively, I mean,
higher than
they could pay more.
Sure,
if they wanted to.
So when you exit, did you have a good exit in 2019? Was it something like you were able to like live off of a little bit?
I sold in 20. No, bro. My first location, we rode through COVID. I just watched my customer base just get wrecked.
Damn.
Yeah, it was terrible. So I had e-com. That was actually where I made money during COVID.
Got it.
I basically made no money. Like I was getting the PPP loans and stuff just to float my employees and pay my rent.
Whoa.
I made nothing, man.
Of course, it's like one of the toughest businesses to be in because you need physical people to physically go there, right?
Come to the gym, especially Northern Virginia, where it's very polarized. They're either super conservative and they don't believe in COVID at all, or they're super liberal and they want like a stick to keep you away from them.
Yeah. Interesting. So then the drop shipping, when you transitioned to that before going to what you do now, what made you not go all in on drop shipping and like, hey, I'm gonna scale this? And
I was. So I was very disconnected from the gym, like leading up to COVID. I didn't have a buyer. We were shopping for a buyer going into the COVID time. And I was very focused on e-commerce during that time. But e-commerce became very complicated during COVID because of logistical issues with shipping and ports and all this mess from things coming from China, right? So fulfilling product became very messy during COVID. Remember when Amazon went from actual next day delivery? Well, you were living here. You probably heard stories.
For sure.
It was actually next day delivery, and then it was sometimes like a week delivery, even with Amazon. So you can imagine how like drop shipping models.
Yes. Especially with millions of businesses and so many people relying on them. They're like, oh, this, because I think there's a saying where it's like agency is easier to start, harder to scale. drop shipping is harder to start, but easier to scale. Right. So I think a lot of people were getting both into the agency world and the drop shipping world. But at the same time, it's like, if you don't know what you don't know, you're just going to always kind of, and I think where you are now, it's interesting because a lot of the coaching that you had with Alex and then obviously the drop shipping experience led you to where you are today with there's days, not all days, like you said, but making 30K a day is pretty nice.
It's pretty sweet.
With the gyms, it's probably pretty difficult to do that.
Dude, before Hormozy, we were doing 10, maybe 15,000 cash collected a month. After Hormozy's program, we sustained 35 to 50K consistently month over month for like 5 years until I sold.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Have you ever met him or did you ever go to
I met him, yeah. I went to gym. I forget what it was called, like the event he did.
Yeah, the gym launch thing.
Gym launch
event. Whatever. Yeah. What were the biggest lessons that you learned from Alex?
How to overcome objections, like based on how to frame the sale in a way where this is going to sound really harsh. I'll just say it, where it's almost like the customer should feel dumb if they don't make the decision to buy because they've already told you all the reasons why they want it, right? And then it's just you figure out the money. So like that was huge. Instead of having to think of these emotional psychological games to like influence and persuade the person, it was so interesting to see how you could help them make a decision for themselves. And something also too. So a lot of high ticket coaching is one-to-one sales, right? Hormozy broke that belief. He had us selling in groups. So we would have 6 slots for the appointment time at my gym. Typically three out of 6 would show.
Oh, you mean okay. You mean like actual customers?
Dude,
I thought you meant gym owners.
We did group pitches.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That's so wild. I mean, honestly, it makes sense because they're all there for the same reason. Obviously, some people want to get shredded. Some people want to get big. Some people want to, but all of them need the gym in order to hit those goals.
But a lot of like sales coaches will tell you got to sell one-on-one.
I think that's very common. Like even when I was signing up to gym years ago, here, I'm just like, yo, just take my car. I know what I need. But in the US, like years ago, it was one-on-one. And there's people waiting.
And why was it one-on-one? Because it's the way it was.
It's just how it was. It's almost like you can do a tour guide one-on-one. You can also do a tour guide with 17 people and show them everything. Why not do that? It is interesting because I think in B2C, it makes more sense. I think B2B, unless you're doing a webinar, I think webinars obviously make sense. But I think if you were to sell like 6 gym owners, I think that would be a little bit difficult because all of them have different problems,
Good. Yeah.
That's how I see it. But it's now that you're dealing more with B2B than B2C, what are the biggest differences that you've noticed? Because I've only been really selling to B2B for the last 6 years, and I did B2C for like 1 year, if that. And I have way more success, and I enjoy B2B way more. But for you, like you did B2C way longer than you've done B2B. So what's the biggest differences you've noticed?
You don't have to sell the dream as much. Like it's more numbers driven. It's less emotion, at least in my experience. I don't know if you feel the same way. You don't have the same types of objections. It's just really, you're just trying to figure out putting the deal together.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The terms, the pricing versus getting this person to get their husband to agree with them or believe that their husband would.
Right.
It's a very different kind
Super different.
Yeah.
Because you're talking to the regular person versus like, not the business owner, we're regular too, but we have different dreams and expectations. And I think a regular person just wants to get in shape or just wants to, sell their house, whatever the case may be.
It's very heavy with emotion.
Yes. Very emotional, where B2B is less emotional. You still want to do connect emotionally, like we mentioned, but I think it's just different, Yeah. I enjoyed more. I actually did we were starting like a side hustle with like a wholesaling company just to test it out. And dude, I'm reviewing one of our partners' calls, and dude, I'm not kidding. It makes me not want to do these calls because you're dealing with like we're going after like the way wholesalers make money is you go after the worst properties possible. You try to
distress typically, right?
Exactly, distress. Something's going on, and you're talking to people that normally I talk to people like you. Oh, John wants an appointment setter and he wants a cold caller. Okay, clearly you're doing something right. You're scaling or you need help. Much easier. But someone that's going through a lot of shit, like mom died, divorce, and then it's a draining call.
Just like selling weight loss. Like, why haven't you lost weight the last 10 years?
100%.
100 pounds overweight.
100%.
It's like a list of emotional traumas or whatever it may be, right?
So with your current business, you've been doing it for 3 years. Like, what are some of the biggest obstacles for you right now in order to grow and scale?
Well, I would say hiring, but we've made some big hires the last 3 months that it's opening me up to do different things. Here's one. I had the mindset that I had to be the one doing the media buying because like we're spending a good amount of money on Facebook per day, sometimes as much as 40 grand, 50 grand a day. So if that doesn't go right, if something goes wrong there, which can, like tech breaks, integrations will just de-integrate or whatever the right word is, that can be very expensive and like wipe out a chunk of your margin from like the month or the month prior, right? So having this mindset that I had to be the one doing the media buying and in the ads manager constantly, I think even with the team around me, I think just breaking that belief and letting go. I've hired and trained up like a internal lead media buyer. And so I'm focusing more on business development because I know there's more leverage outside of the ads manager. I can't just force Facebook to get me half the cost, even with good creative, but I could probably negotiate double the payout with the right buyer.
Correct.
Right? Or better terms.
Or get more clients.
Exactly.
Right. So yeah, that's interesting. I think a lot of marketers have that misconception. There's two problems. I think one, I've noticed that a lot of marketers are very average media buyers. So it's hard for them to find someone better than them, and someone that's better than you could be very expensive. So if you're really good at media buying and you understand marketing, you understand trends that are happening, you can find someone that's average and make them good as long as they're hungry.
80% now.
80%, right?
Yeah.
And then another thing is like defining the media buyers. Even for us, like we hire media buyers, but it is definitely a trickier position because a lot of media buyers that we've seen just go through the process, they're freelancers. So they would rather have like 6 clients rather than just go all in on you, right? So it's a very tricky position because there is leverage with that position. So you have to find the right person, and you also do like an A-player, superstar, rockstar media buyer, bro. They're CMO, like they're CMO level. They're not
running their own ship, or they're an affiliate marketer.
Exactly, or they want a piece of the pie.
Exactly.
Or you're paying them like a very high salary, you know what I mean? So a lot of people can't afford that. But if you're good, like how I see it, like I feel like I'm pretty good at sales. If I can get an average salesperson right now, but they're hungry, they're determined, they're coachable, bro, I'll make you a fucking superstar. Right? I don't need, like, of course, I want an A-player salesperson.
The coachables, that's the big one.
That's the biggest one. Yeah. Have you noticed with like you guys hiring, has that been one of the hardest things to find? Is coachable people? Like, what has been the challenge when it comes to hiring?
I think I've been the most apprehensive, maybe because I'm in my own little bubble, being surrounded by other affiliates, right? Where I could probably go to I've got a huge audience, not like huge audience, but like a big audience in this hyper niche of guys that run traffic in my media. I could probably just put out a post right now on my Instagram or on my YouTube and get a bunch of people that say they want to run traffic for me. But I think that there's a psychological lack of trust, knowing the nature of the affiliate space, where it's very like you can be friends, but some people are fucking cutthroat, man.
They're cutthroat.
So they'll steal your campaign. But the reality is they can do that anyway. Like the ads manager has transparency now. You could search my ads if you really want to.
I like that.
So I think just kind of letting go. But for this internal lead buyer we hired, I went to Upwork. So I actually specifically looked for someone that was working for an agency that wasn't getting enough upside on the back that wanted more money. And he's not in this affiliate world where he's in the mindset of how do I get the most payout per offer.
Yes. That's interesting. How big is your team right now?
With him, we're at 11.
Okay, so pretty lean.
Very creative heavy. So half of our team, they just pump out like
content.
Yeah. Exactly.
Content for the ads. And
then also my YouTube channel. So
got it. I saw that. So your YouTube channel is rocking. Like you have almost 10K subs.
It's getting there. So
dude, that's man. The thing is, when I see that in our industry, I'm like, dude, that's like a lot. That's like legit. I looked at it, I'm like, holy shit, that's legit, because you never know, because like on Instagram, you have a few thousand followers, right? So it's like you're growing your Instagram, but your YouTube is legit. It's like super legit. So it's like, what have you noticed about growing? Because that's one of my focuses this year is like growing the YouTube channel. What has worked for you so much to grow it to 10K, almost 10K subs?
We've gone very specific within the affiliate marketing space, which I think, I'm not sure if I shared this with you. I'm looking to expand out to make money online in different ways, like interesting, unique ways, like what you do. Super cool, man. That's why I reached out to you.
Yeah.
So I think that being very specific for a specific type of person, at least for some time to build a base is a really good way to grow. And then also just really high quality production, and then just good content, like purely focused on just making good content.
Yeah.
Not selling. Like if you look at the last 20 or 30 videos I put out, there's no sales pitch.
It's
literally just me talking to people and asking questions I find interesting about them.
Really cool. So when you say you want to go expect to make money, like you want to work with like agency owners, influencers, creators, things like that, or is it more
people that are doing interesting stuff online?
Cool.
Yeah. And I have no desire to sell any kind of course or at least no coaching at this time.
Gotcha.
I'm very focused on our actual lead gen business. I think it would be a disservice to myself and my team if I were to go try to launch an offer.
That's how I feel too. And then that's why, like, you know, with the podcast, I'm like, I just want to interview cool people, you know, and I've had a chance to, like, obviously interview like super people I've never connected with at all. And I think it's a leverage point, but it's like one of my passions is like, you know, to be able to grow a podcast and just be able to interview super cool people, because the right people want to talk about themselves, and want to, you know, they want to talk about whatever is interesting to them. And, you know, right now it's like, on marketers, but man, I'd love to interview politicians, athletes, whatever it is, and just get to know them, because my hero is Joe Rogan. I was just like, yo, he lives the best life ever. He's podcasts, you know, 4 or 5 times a week and makes hundreds of millions of dollars. Like, he's doing something right.
He could launch any business he wants next week and with the right partner, and it's going to be successful.
He said
it's a Logan Paul effect, right?
100%. It's the brand he's built, but he's also built this for years. Like, I think he's going on 15 years or 14 years.
The first 5 to 7 years, what was his like sponsor? It was like On It, but he was making money from.
It was On It, and it was the flashlights. yeah.
Aubrey Marcus. I don't know what happened there, man. But,
I mean, Aubrey Marcus is a killer too, but like, no, it's different. But then now you look at the last few years, because people started getting on Joe Rogan around, like, I would say, like COVID times, I think, when people were more locked in. I've been on him since 2016, so I was also kind of late, but I was pretty early. And I'm like, dude, I'm a kid. I'm 20 years old watching Joe Rogan. I'm like, and I would say, like, I love you, Dad, but I have like 2 dads. I feel like in my life, I have my dad, my physical father, and I have my virtual father, because they're literally the same age. I think Joe was like 1 year older, and I was like, okay, my dad is, you know, a lot of the reason I'm here, but also there's like a limitation to his knowledge.
Right.
So I wanted to expand, and someone that interviews thousands of people, you know what I mean? So John, as we wrap this up, I have a list of questions I like to ask people towards the end here, which have to do with a lot of stuff that we talked about. In the last, you know, years of being an entrepreneur, what was the lowest point of your life, and how did you overcome it?
When I first opened my gym, I really struggled to make any kind of traction. I was doing, I remember we built our first 100 customers at the wrong price point by doing ground signs. So I actually like purchased a bunch of ground signs and hired a virtual agency to take the calls.
You didn't have a person do the billboard too?
I might as well have had. And we built that way, but that's like very limited how you build like that, right? So I worked with this high ticket coach, and I started selling high ticket packages. But I did it wrong. I didn't do the math right. Like, we filled our gym at the wrong price point. We were at capacity. Like, I literally was just losing money, and we had a full gym. It was so backwards. And I remember I made a bunch of really bad decisions. We were taking paid in fulls. I had a bunch of cash. I just blew it all. I went and bought like a Range Rover when I should not have been buying a Range Rover. I just made a lot of bad decisions.
And you're probably younger too, so it's like you're just learning.
Man. Thankfully, I was 24, 25.
Yeah, it's like, that's the time to make mistakes.
So grateful I fucked up early. Yeah. Because, I racked up I was like $30K in debt for no reason. Like, just like bullshit debt. Yeah.
And you don't know what you don't know, right? So it's like, this is why I love coaching so much, because I'm like, you get to like speed your way through it. Like, if you had gym lunch.
If I had the right coach.
Right. If you had gym lunch at 24, 25. You probably
life would have been different.
Way different.
Traffic was a lot cheaper too. So
100%. And Alex talks about it all the time. To date, what's the best hire you ever made?
So my creative director, who also does our YouTube editing, he was an intern for my gym for like 10 years ago. And then I've developed him to become a salesperson. He didn't know how to do creatives. I got him started, and he does documentaries in addition to like producing my YouTube channel.
Oh, that's amazing. So he's not full-time with you. He also does.
He's built a team within our team, like from the creative machine.
Got it.
Right. But, so he's my best hire because I just developed him from scratch. Like, I mean, like he did the work. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not narcissist trying to take all the credit, but and he's awesome. Just awesome human.
And you've been with him for how long?
Well, about 10 years. We're going to Dubai together on Sunday for Affiliate World. So we're going to document the whole thing. Yeah.
Dude, I just was, when I was at FHL this week, I met someone that's literally going to that same event, Affiliate World. And they're like, yeah, it's like the biggest affiliate.
You should be going, man.
Yeah, I should. I mean, I just don't work with affiliates as much. Maybe it's a world that we definitely I'm definitely interested in. So like the counter to that, what's the worst hire you ever made? And why?
I hired one of our most successful weight loss stories. So she lost like 100 pounds completely when I owned the gym. She completely turned her life around. and I developed her as a coach. But then I also, this is when I was just going through that bad phase where I was blowing money and I didn't really want to be involved. I don't know, something about me being in my own business. I had this mentality like it needed to run itself. And I actually dumped it on her, but I actually put a lot on her. And she ended up starting her own gym. And on top of running myself into the ground in debt, she also took all my customers.
Oh my God, that's crazy. That's crazy. I remember we had something similar in like 2020 when an account manager, we fired her unexpectedly because she was just not a culture fit. And that's always a tough thing because when they're hitting their numbers, I always say this is one of the hardest things to do. When they're hitting their numbers, they're hitting their KPIs, sometimes over delivering, but they're not a culture fit. That's a hard person to fire. When obviously when you're a big company of hundreds of people, easy fire. But when you have when this person is you're relying on them and they have 20 or 30 clients. So we fired her and she was totally did not see that coming. And she ended up calling we didn't have an NDA. She ended up calling the clients and starting her own chiropractic agency and took 12 clients. And I remember being like, holy shit, I just lost $4K in recurring income. Just like that. And I'm just from commission. The business lost $40K, a month. So yeah, you gotta, that's why it's people say oh, bad hires are costly. It's like, not only are they costly, they can literally deteriorate a part of your business. You know what I mean? They not only is a culture fit, but no, I'd rather have someone that doesn't hit their numbers than a bad culture fit.
It's easier fire.
Way easier fire, way easier to notice, way easier yeah, dude, look, this is where we're at, this is where you're at. But culture fit's it's almost subjective sometimes because it's this person doesn't like you. I get along great with you, but this person does not get along with you. What's going on?
Or there's a huge politics difference.
Yeah.
And that just comes up naturally. That creates a lot of stress.
It does. And I'll tell you, one of the hardest parts of building, my business has been in our team right now, we have people from 11 or 10 different countries with 4 different time zones. Time zones, whatever, right? Whatever it is, what it is. But the cultures, man, the Filipinos and then the Egyptians, then Colombians and Mexicans even. Dude, it's we're talking about 4 different universes.
Yeah.
They don't, So it's interesting. It's challenging, but I think when the right core values, the right mission, right vision, and you do hire the right people, all the politics stuff, all that stuff, dude, I have Make America Remote Again hat, people my team is aware. So obviously I'm not going to ever bring it up if they're uncomfortable about it, but I also know what to, you need to know what to say and what not to say to the CEO. That's something I've learned. And sometimes you do got to hold back on certain things that you want to say. And it's something I've learned. Here's a good one. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
And what's around what specifically?
We'll talk about in sales. We were talking about sales a little bit. The best sales piece of advice.
The sales. Not accepting the first objection. I think that was one of my best friends who actually inspired me to start my gym. He owned a couple martial arts schools. Sure, he finished. He kicked it out of university early.
Yeah,
and he went in. He followed in his stepfather's footsteps. He brought from Korea martial arts to Northern Virginia area. So he actually started his own schools, and I was just going to him because I had no confidence. I was not the same person I am today. In all the worst ways. And I was very bad at asking for money and believing it. And then accepting, dude, I'm getting a no, I can't afford it. I was like, okay, well, good luck.
Figure it out. Yeah. Interesting. When is the right time to walk away from a project or a partnership or from a business?
When it's emotionally costing you more. Well, it depends on this. If we're just talking a toxic partnership, is that a good
toxic partnership? How about for a business? If you don't have a business partner and it's just you, when do you say is it a good time? Because obviously you've done this and you timed it right.
If it's not ultimately what you want to do first, and it's costing you more than it should, then it's probably time to let it go. Unless it's something you're willing to commit to do. I mean, I think it's a case by case, man.
Yeah, 100%. I do agree. I think it's also depends on the business too, right? So some brick and mortars, there's an instance there versus
if
a
they're
market.
Chasing a shiny object, that's a different answer.
Completely,
which we've all done.
Completely,
I still do.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's hard. It's hard not to say no sometimes, right? So this is a 2-part question. If you could go back 3 years ago and start your pay-per-lead company, what would you have done differently, knowing what you know now?
I would have gotten better at creatives faster. I would have started going to attorney conferences sooner. And I would have stuck with and focused on one vertical consistently, because we actually took a break to focus on insurance for about 9 months. And overall, that cost us money during that time, plus opportunity cost.
Interesting. And in 3 years, like I'm sure the revenue fluctuates, but like what has been like your best month in terms of revenue?
January, this past January, so it's February now. I think we did probably like 600K or 700K in revenue, not profit.
That's still insane.
Yeah, it's good.
I mean, that's like way more than I'm sure you're doing with the gyms. I mean, the gyms.
Lucky to hit even half that in a year.
Yeah,
in a year.
In a year,
Yeah.
which is crazy.
Yeah,
it's crazy. It's crazy. It's and then obviously having 600K, like, do you think it could scale to like millions? I mean, obviously you're on point, but
we're gonna be at $1 million a month, if not end of the month this month, then next month. Like, without a doubt.
Wow, that's incredible.
Revenue, not profit.
Revenue, but it's still, I mean, profit margin. Even if you're like average 20%, 30%,
it's all relationships, though.
For sure.
Like if I hadn't gone, like I was saying earlier, going deep,
in events
with existing relationships, I wouldn't get that.
It's interesting, man, because I know someone that's in similar space as you, and he basically has generated millions. I mean, at this point, tens of millions of dollars in revenue from one client that basically they almost had like an exclusive deal somewhat, but not really. And then this one client now want to part ways with him for whatever reason. They want to bring it in-house, so, margins. And now it's like, fuck, I don't know what to do. So it's really interesting because as much as one client can change your whole life, you don't want to rely on just one client to do this. How are you avoiding this in your space? Because it is, I'm sure there's case by case where you have one client that's ginormous and he wants to buy the most amount of leads for that area, whatever the case is. Have you seen instances when this happens to you? And is there ways we avoid it?
The market will shift on you. So we focus on mass tort, which is like if you've had this product and you got sick, you could file for compensation, right? Just to give you a brief idea.
Sure.
If iPhones start getting people cancer, then you could file a claim because you have cancer and proof.
Sure.
So these are very speculative like campaigns. So sometimes there'll be a case building that this type of material used in this hat could be linked to cancer. Hedge fund money comes in for the attorneys to then purchase up a bunch of retainers, start fighting in court. Maybe that first battle in court flops and the campaign's dead.
Wow.
So a lot of times I can't control necessarily like the budget or the demands. So having to balance and almost like juggle multiple is a part of it. But then also the other half of it is how can you become so valuable to your buyer, like your customer in this case, that they're never going to just cut you off if there is budget. So those two things, like managing multiple campaigns, plus like just getting really, really sticky and close with your buyer.
You have to have like personal relationships with them. Like, do you fly out to see them and like?
That's why I go to conferences. I don't go to find new opportunities. I go to like just sit down, and have dinner with them,
nurture the relationships you have. That's really that's my dream because sometimes I go to conferences, even going to FHL, and I'm like, I don't want to say fake because that's not the right term, but I've never felt so like not in my world. And I'm a networker, dude. I love it. But everybody at this FHL party, and by the way, great party, amazing. Bad marketing is incredible. I love Eddie to death. It's just that when there's so many people in the room for one reason to like get clients and like, network, sure. But it feels like everybody's in what's in it for me world. Right. And where you go to conferences and you're like building on the relationships, I think it's just, you feel better. Like you go to sleep, you're like, man, I had a great dinner with John. I just found out XYZ about him and his wife and all this stuff. Where if I'm trying to pitch you my service and then I have to like earn your business and then like, I don't know how it's going to work out.
Of things you're trying to check off.
Correct. Exactly.
So I go to conferences with intentions. I think that's a big thing too. I mean, I've been doing this for a few years now, right? But I still need to have some intention because I tried to just show up and like, that's cool, but you have no control of the outcome as much, right? Whereas I now have a few intentions. Like I'm going to Dubai. I'm mainly going because I got invited to speak. If I didn't get invited to speak, I probably wouldn't go. So I then booked a flight with my cameraman as well. So we're going to make 5 or 6 podcasts out of this. Yeah. And then that's it. Like I'm going there to speak. I'm going to document and get as many podcasts as possible from people I find interesting. And then I just signed up for a mastermind event. Alex Fedorov is big in the e-com space. Okay. So now I'm specifically going to that event with 2 or 3 intentions.
In Dubai.
Okay. The day after.
Literally, it's a business trip. Yeah. Full on. Yep. Amazing. I mean, that's the way to do it, right? If you go to a conference and you have no intention, like I like to write down my intentions. I also have a business partner. Sometimes we'll bring a camera guy and I'm like, okay, what are our intentions? We're going to network. Let's see if we can get more numbers. Let's see if we can get more, what. And as I'm talking to you right now, I'm like, man, I'd much rather go to events where I speak, obviously one, but two, where you actually nurture the relationship, because I think at the end of the day, we're online marketers. So a lot of times we're very isolated from the real world. So sometimes, going to these events makes us feel a little bit more human. You're like, oh my God, there's other people. Yeah, exactly. You're with other people. So I think that's super cool, man. I want to go to Dubai. Have you been to Dubai?
Yeah, it's my third time.
Yeah. So you like it?
I fucking love it. It's sick.
Have you thought about like living there?
No, because we're so focused on like the 9 to 5 time.
Right.
And I mean, Dubai's cool, but
yeah,
it's hot as hell now.
For sure. And the one thing I heard about Dubai when you live there from people is it forces you to level the up, because the people there are
right here. I mean, there's really cool guys like you. Yeah. I've got a couple of different buddies that have massive. There's a lot of agencies here.
Correct.
So if you're looking for inspiration that way, you could find it here. But it's not Dubai. Man.
It's not Dubai. No, and then also like you're $600K a month. I mean, with revenue, you're one of the biggest companies here from like a day, at least from the network I've seen. Not the biggest, I'm sure there's some people, but Dubai, you're just, maybe like you're
average.
You're average. I was gonna say, like,
the scammers are putting up bigger numbers.
100% crypto people, so it's just a different perspective. But then you have to ask yourself, is it worth sacrificing the lifestyle you have here to live there? Because then
for some people it is.
Which is very interesting to me.
To me, it's not
at all. No. I want to go there really bad. But
I would live there if it was in the right time zone. But because of the time zone, I will not do it.
Yeah. I would live there if it was the right time zone and if it wasn't so close to like a complete shit show area. That's a different story. I'm from Israel. I can say that. But yeah. Anyways, John, I appreciate your time. I'm excited to do your podcast now. And guys, we're going to keep making America remote again. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. See you on the next one.
Thank you.
That was fun.